How you doing, wrestling fans? And welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast, the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio, featuring some of the biggest names of that time, and this show is certainly no exception. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happened in real time, and now we get to relive those moments in that history right here on this podcast. Today, we will review the show that aired on 1240 AM WGBB in West Babylon, New York on September the 4th, 1994. The show will focus around the backlash from the August 27th ECW show when Shane Douglas won the NWA Heavyweight title tournament only to throw the belt on the ground, refusing to accept the title, and then declaring that he was the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. Thus, ECW, Paul Heyman, Todd Gordon, Douglas committing a screw job against promoter Dennis Corralluzzo, a board of directors of the NWA, and that title that dates back to 1905. Anyway, we'll cover it all today with the principles that were involved. I do want to tell you about our Patreon account, which is each and every week, I say, so very important to us, and it really is. It helps cover the costs of producing and distributing this program. I would appreciate your support. If you're not currently a member of our community, it starts at $5 a month, and it gets you the complete archives of not only this podcast, our video podcast, and all of the historic Pro Wrestling Spotlight shows. $5 a month. Get you in the door. There are other levels as well that go up all the way to the executive producer level that Anthony Pyrus is part of and Joseph Holloway. So I know you'll find one of the levels there that you would really enjoy. So go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. Let's bring on our friend, our producer, our creative director. He's known as Marsh.
Hey,
there he is. Hello, Marsh. How are you?
I'm doing good. I was trying to make sure I didn't sneeze. I was like, this is not the time.
That would have been fun. You could do it. It's all right. Just don't, visually, it would be even more fun if you sneeze and then a bunch of snot came out of your nose and
just covers the
the screen.
Yeah. No, it's good to be back. Good to be back 30 years later.
Yeah. Actually, cool. 29.
Yeah, I know we're in the 29 era now, but it was cool too because yeah.
Go ahead.
I liked this one a lot. It was stacked. It's really fun having you back on a 2-hour platform. You know what I mean? Like you are so much more relaxed with your time,
right?
Which is both good and bad because it also means you don't have a ton of sponsors, right? Like.
Yeah, I think LNS was like the only one at that point. They had come back. Of course, we are, we always had a long running and standing relationship with Larry and Steve over at LNS, and we brought them a lot of business. So it was natural for them to rejoin us as soon as we went back on GBB, as they were supporting us at every station.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were there, and they wanted to, and you talked about them a few times in this one. So it was really cool. You're excited about what's going on. You're excited about what's happening with ECW, and you got Dennis Corralluzzo, Paulie, and Shane Douglas all on one episode.
And callers.
Not all at the same time. I don't think Dennis took any calls.
No, he did not.
Shane and Paul both took calls. It was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very exciting time. I mean, me coming back in, at least getting on the air, I had not left. I was following ECW, going to their shows. Certainly during my time off, trying to, stay enthused about the wrestling business. And I really found listening to these early shows back on GBB that there was a new energy and there was a new headspace. Doesn't last long, because we go off the air in like literally, 4 months from now for good. But let's enjoy it while we can. Let's enjoy the upbeat John Arezzi trying to cover the business and the stories. And this story, the ECW screw job, and
Yeah.
them officially changing their name to Extreme. All of that is covered on this, what I would call a historic show.
I agree, and I think this is kind of peak John and who you are and who you always wanted to be in the wrestling business. Outside of the promoting side of things, in an aspect of your own promotion, being able to help facilitate others' promotions and something you were passionate about and a product that you loved with people you enjoyed to be around, like this was you using your platform to really bolster that and
Mhm.
still cover all the news that was actively happening, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was an exciting time, and the cooperation I was getting from ECW was really good. I knew that this one was going to be a blockbuster just because of the backlash that had taken place over the week in the wrestling newsletter world, and everyone talking about it. The screw job, Corralluzzo, Shane, Paul. It was all right in front of us, and I was very happy to be able to cover it the way I did on this show.
Yeah. Was there like a ton of magazine articles coming out about it at the time? Newsletter stuff?
Newsletter, yeah, certainly the Observer and the Pro Wrestling Torch. I mean, those were the two big ones. There, of course, there was a lot of smaller newsletters, but those were the two go-tos.
Yeah.
I don't know if Matt Watch was still around at that time. I don't think they were. But yeah, it created quite a stir. The 900 numbers were still around, obviously.
Mhm.
So this was a big story. The fact that they trashed the NWA title, everyone was talking about it. It was on everybody's mind.
Was the story coming out of it more of like ECW is born, or was it the NWA is dead? Dead. Because those are two
I think
sides of
it's a
the
little of
story.
both. Them, trashing the NWA title, even though the NWA was trying to align themselves with regional promotions like they did when they were at their heyday, different territories having the NWA champions show up at shows in different territories to boost attendance. That was a plan of the board of directors, which was a skeletal crew at that point. And of course, the emergence of ECW with Paul's booking and the storylines being developed, and the guys like Taz and the guys like Sabu and Cactus was there then, and the Public Enemy and Shane and, Matt Osborne. I mean, there was something magical happening with the ECW brand, and each and every show, the attendance was getting larger and larger and larger. And it was becoming a must see show. If you were able to get to the ECW arena at that time, it was magic in that building. A little dangerous. Sometimes people were accidentally set on fire, or there were a million chairs being thrown in the ring, or guys were getting hung, and the blood, the barbed wire. I mean, it had everything. It really did. So it was really coming into its own as like a fabulous alternative to WCW and the WWF.
Yeah. And you talk about in this, you're going to have a bus trip coming up. Did you find your bus trips were getting easier to sell out, or were you not
It's the
seeing a lot of return?
same. I mean, it's the same. No matter how hard you push something or say it's good, people just do what they do. I don't know if it was a sellout, and then as we will cover in the next episode, I'll just leave that for the next episode.
Yeah.
What happens regarding the bus trip? But yeah, the bus trips were back.
They were back, but you weren't seeing a massive influx on the bus side.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
still only on the air for like a week,
That's true. You're 2 weeks in.
and the word was spreading that I had returned. So the audience, as we even noticed with this show, and especially the next show and the ones after that, it was growing every week.
Yep. And this was September 4th, 1994. This was right after SummerSlam took place. You really went on, I mean, you didn't go on and on about it, but you really put over the Brett versus Owen match in the cage as your
Yes.
favorite match of the night.
Yep.
You mentioned in your opening that the ECW NWA tournament happened, and the ECW will no longer be calling themselves NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling. They've been changed to Extreme Championship Wrestling, which you mentioned last week that you saw them spray paint that over, right?
Yes, in the back. Yeah, it was Public Enemy.
Was that Like behind the curtain?
It was behind the curtain. Yeah, there was another separate area in the back where they cut promos.
Yeah,
in the dressing room. That's where the vinyl banners were.
Yeah. Okay. I thought they did it in front of the crowd, but no, they did it for themselves. And I guess the next promos they would have cut would have had that behind them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's dope. You mentioned Corralluzzo, Paulie, and Shane going to be on. And then we'll bring on old Donnie to go through the capsule of what he felt like was the news of the week.
Good old Don. Let's bring him on. Well, let's go right to the news capsule and be joined by Don Leibel from upstate New York. Donnie, are you there?
I am, John, and thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, leading things off, as John said, the big story this past week, the World Wrestling Federation's 7th annual SummerSlam pay-per-view is now in the history books. On last Monday night's card, only one championship changed owners. Razor Ramon began his second reign as Intercontinental Champ by pinning Diesel. Now, the night before in Indianapolis, Indiana's Market Square Arena, Diesel and Shawn Michaels captured the WWF tag belts from the Head Shrinkers. Also, Alundra Blaze held on to her women's title with the win over Bull Nakano. Bret Hart was the first to get out of the cage in a match with his brother Owen. And the evil Undertaker mercifully was done away with by the original Undertaker. And as expected, Davey Boy Smith made his return to the promotion. Now, plans are to expect the evil Undertaker Brian Lee to return to the WWF in about 2 months' time in a biker gimmick. Lee is back working in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. In World Championship Wrestling news, the promotion is on tour all this week in Europe. Tonight they have a card in London, England. And this coming Thursday and Friday, the main events will be Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. Also, with the powers in WCW's CNN Tower believing they have positioned themselves as the new #1 United States promotion, there is talk of running their December 27th Starrcade Praise show in the Georgia Dome, where there is a 50,000-plus seating capacity. Also, just who have Harlem Heat been teasing on television with as their new manager? Well, Teddy Long or the return of Ron Simmons are the inside favorites. Former two-time World Heavyweight Champion Bruno Sammartino will be dining at the White House with President and Mrs. Clinton on October the 28th. Now, Sammartino, along with other fellow Italian-American major league celebrities such as Frank Sinatra, Liza Minnelli, Sylvester Stallone, and Danny DeVito, are among the honorees at a charity bash on October the 29th in the Washington, D.C. Hilton. Bruno is being recognized for his campaigning against drug use with children. Well, in case you haven't found out yet, with the Fox network airing NFL football beginning today, there has been a shifting of programming normally shown in the early afternoon, as in WWF Wrestling on Channel 5. No longer shown at 12 o'clock, the WWF show will be now aired at 10:30 a.m. After today's show, we're now in town, Pennsylvania at the State Fair with a main event of Bam Bam Bigelow versus Mabel. The Fed begins a 10-show tour of Europe this week. Now, stops will include Germany, England, and Scotland. Well, there's a new Global Wrestling Federation light heavyweight champion. He's Japan's Asumo Nishimura. He copped the title from Alex Porto in the Dallas Sportatorium a week ago. This past Thursday in Tampa, Florida, Larry Simon, known for much of his 44-year involvement in wrestling as Professor Boris Malenko, died after a long battle with leukemia. A native of Newark, New Jersey, he began his apprenticeship in 1950 and remained on the East Coast through 1956 when he began branching out to South America and many tours of the Orient. Now, in recent years, Malenko was involved in the UWF in Japan, which now is the UWFI. When joining an interview I did with him a couple of years back on what he viewed as his greatest contribution to wrestling, wasn't a title or a specific match that was his choice. His reply was simply that the believability of what the sport brought on years ago during his heyday and the reaction that the wrestlers received from their audiences is what made it all great for him. For a dozen continuous years, Jacksonville, Florida was Malenko's town, as they say, as sellouts every Thursday night were the norm. He's survived by his two sons, Joe and Dean, both wrestlers, and a former student at his school, Debbie Malenko. Now, Debbie, who wrestled 4 years as an amateur in Florida's Land O'Lakes, well, when she started wrestling in Japan, promoters gave her the last name Malenko in honor of her trainer. Finally, this week in wrestling history was in 1978, 15 years ago, that Bruiser Brody became the World Class Championship Wrestling American titleist for a third time by beating Fritz von Erich. And 6 years ago, in 1987, a Universal Wrestling Federation television belt became Terry Taylor's as he defeated Shane Douglas in Morgan City, Louisiana. For the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, I'm Don Labble reporting. Capsule time, 1:11.
Yeah, after the capsule, you guys talked about Malenko for a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had got to see him wrestle in Knoxville once, and it was against Ronnie Garvin in a chain match.
Yeah.
Which were the bloodiest pictures that I've ever taken as a photographer. I mean, just incredible what was going on. But yeah, what a great wrestler he was. And of course, Dean, I mean, it was just a lineage there. So it was a sad loss to see and hear the report from Donnie. And Donnie, you know, obviously kept in touch with a lot of the old timers. He really did.
He had mentioned he'd kept in touch with Malenko up until the end.
Yeah. And that's what Don does today with baseball players.
Oh, yeah?
He talks to old timers all the time because he still writes freelance for newspapers, sports newspapers in Florida, where he's based now, and also where he came from up near Syracuse, near Cooperstown. So his baseball knowledge is really unsurpassed. I mean, and that's what he does every day. You know, I talked to him last night. He's I'm talking to this guy next week, and I'm talking to this guy, and, you know, Bucky Dent lives right by me. And I'm like, he's always on the go. He's like an Energizer bunny.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And that's what he did. That's what he did 30 years ago. Same thing with wrestling until that infamous roast beef sandwich with cheese.
That roast beef with cheese did him in.
That was the end of it.
Yeah, you guys talk about the match that you saw. You even mentioned, I don't know if it was yours or Donnie's photos that ended up in one of the magazines. I think
it was mine. I did a whole story for Ring Wrestling magazine on that chain match. Bloody. Yeah. I even hesitate to post those pictures on social media because they're so graphic.
Wow, even to this day, after all we've seen,
they're graphic. Yeah, crimson masks.
Is that where? I wonder what match it was the first time an announcer said that. I know Jim Ross said he heard it when he was younger, and it's a tribute he gave to that. But I wonder what really was the first time you heard it. You know,
that's a good question. Why don't you do some research on that?
Yeah, I'll dig around. I'll see.
Why don't you? I'll give you Donnie's number. You talk to him, and maybe you guys can come up with the answer.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll
you can call Jim Ross, right, and see, you know, if you guys can commiserate on that.
I know Jim Ross knows who he first heard say it, and I think he knows which match, but I don't know if that is the same as the first time it was said.
I don't know if it's Gordon Soley.
Yeah, it was Soley.
He was what a great announcer that guy was. My goodness.
Amazing. And that's why he still says it, is because an homage to Soley, who he felt was always the best.
Yes. Very believable.
Yeah. And then Donnie says he's going to see you in 3 weeks at the CAC.
Yeah, that's a topic we're going to discuss on the next show.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. Did you guys live like close enough to each other to see each other, or did you just call each other a lot?
It was the phone, because he lived probably 4 or 5 hours from Long Island.
Okay.
I mean, we did get together early on, like in the 70s, because he, you know, my grandmother lived in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn, and Donnie lived in the same area, so we get to see each other pretty often back in the 70s.
Yeah. And then plus you guys saw each other at the garden shows, so
back then, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, it's kind of like Donnie's been in my life for most of it.
Yeah.
And he just calls me out of the blue, like yesterday, calls me up. I'm watching the freaking Blue Jays season go down the toilet. Donnie's calling me up and just starts talking baseball for 30 minutes. And he's always like, all right, Johnny, take care. And he just hangs up. And after he hangs up, all right, take care, Don. But he's already hung up already.
Yeah, he's already gone. Oh, there he goes. That's awesome. That's funny. I got a good buddy of mine who'll call me randomly, and it's like about a game that we're playing or a wrestling thing that's going on. And then it's like, all right, man, I'll talk to you later. I'm like, okay. Um, but let's see. So you have some ad spots. You do the LNS spot. This is the first episode we're starting to hear all of your bumpers, your ins and outs.
Lots of bumpers.
I didn't clip all of. I clipped them all. I didn't put them into a clip here though, because you are playing music under them all, and I'm not sure if we're going to get dinged on that. So what I'm doing is kind of compiling them, either in this episode at the end or in a next episode. Maybe we'll put it in there so the Patreons can definitely hear them.
Yeah.
If you're not a Patreon, then it may not make it to the YouTube cut.
Yeah, I know there's like those songs that I was using for this run of the show were all kind of commercially released, and that screws us up when it comes to putting them up on the YouTube channel anyway. Not necessarily, they don't flag them on a podcast though, do they?
No.
Or they can.
They should.
They should.
I don't think they would. No. So I think the Patreon and the audio are typically the same audio.
Yeah.
Where if I ever have to make an edit for YouTube, it's a little different. But
yeah, YouTube, like, they'll find it like faster than shit goes through a duck.
Yeah, I was honestly worried. I was on a Patty Loveless spot the last time because I left in like the first 3 or 4 notes.
Yeah,
and then you talk over it. No, we didn't get flagged because I think you're only allowed a certain amount of time on it, right? And it's how identifiable is it? So the fact they're talking over the music makes me think maybe, but we'll find out, and we'll, at the very least, we'll compile a bunch of them together. But like on this one, you had Public Enemy, you had Doink, you had Paulie, Benoit, Paulie, Cactus, Shane Douglas, and you had these guys on here multiple times, and it was different spots each time.
Yeah, I had them cut. Like I'd bring a script with me, and I was like, all right, just read these 3 or 4 promos, and that's what I did. So
I was a little surprised too, because I thought that you would like save them up, but you were just like burning
I was
through.
just blasting them out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great though. It was awesome. Public Enemy, I got a big kick out of theirs. They were goofy.
They were very goofy. Yeah.
But you bring on Dennis Corralluzzo, who didn't do any promo spots for you. That's weird. You know?
He wasn't in the mood.
Can you imagine Christmas time comes around? It's like, this is Dennis Corralluzzo. Merry Christmas to all the Pro Wrestling Spotlights.
And fuck ECW.
ECW. I pulled one clip from Dennis, and that's only because if you've been listening to the show with any regularity, anytime we bring up the Dennis stuff or when we had Todd Gordon on, we play clips from this interview specifically. And so a lot of it we've heard because of the way we've broken it up in the past. So I have the tail end of it because I don't think that was the clip that we've heard as regularly, but the beginnings of it, talking about it being a double cross and a lie, talking about Sean and Paul being going on lying about it on the radio shows now, saying that it was planned all along.
Yeah, of course, everybody could hear the entire interview and the entire show with all the music, the commercials, the promos, everything if you're a patron.
Yep.
And that's, the $5 a month level, and you get to hear all of these damn things. And sometimes it's like, we only have so much time to play these clips, and I know you have a struggle each and every week, especially when we have multiple guests like this, and how do you chop it up and how do you put the most relevant clips in? So it's a challenge for you, and I tip my hat to you if I was wearing one.
Yeah. It can be a challenge because sometimes you just want, every time you just want people to listen to the whole thing. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you can't just sit here and play the whole thing and think that that's enough. So it's a balance. So the other thing that you guys mentioned, which I thought was interesting, was that there's only 2 active members of the NWA in the U.S., and that's Dennis and Crockett. Corralluzzo mentions how WCW and NGPW have both disassociated from the NWA altogether. They're down to 5 members from, I believe it was 25 in their heyday. And they're hoping to try and get back to like a 10 to 15 number. I don't think they ever do, but you refer to it as a pretty dormant company.
Yeah, well, they were.
Now, do you feel that what happened in Philadelphia last week hurt those chances of the title getting perhaps getting respect, or the trashing of the title last week? Do you think it hurt that belt?
No, I don't think it did, because people, no matter what happens, people are going to look at it that it was a double cross and a big lie. And, they've had a week now to come up with some concoction to act like they're the good guys and we're the bad guys. but we're going to have another tournament. We've decided that that tournament that they had is null and void due to the actions of Todd Gordon and the attitude of Shane Douglas, and it's not even going to go down in the record books. If Shane Douglas wants to go around saying he's the NWA champion, fine, he can say that, but he never was as far as we're concerned. And we're going to have another tournament, and we're going to get somebody with a good attitude, and we're going to get members that aren't double-crossers and liars. I mean, this is supposed to be a commitment from a group of people to try to rebuild something. And they totally tried to destroy it, and they didn't. As a matter of fact, it made us stronger.
Well, Dennis, all I could say is that, as far as a traditionalist looking at pro wrestling, now, you're not going to get me, or no one is, to knock the ECW product. I enjoy what ECW does. I think the booking of Paulie Dangerously is very good. He's developed some great characters. Well, for whatever happened last week, everyone had their motives and reasons for it. We're going to try to get the other side of the story, but I do wish you and the NWA luck, because as a wrestling traditionalist and someone that's been following the business for as many years as I have, I hope, and for the betterment of the wrestling business, that there are more promotions that become active.
Right. One last thing. I worked with them up to the end to try to make this thing a success and work out. I even done an interview for him at the end, and then I know when I got the belt back, when the belt was handed back to me, right then I knew it was a double cross. And no matter how much people try to sugarcoat it, or they're going to try to sugarcoat it, they're liars and double crossers, and that's the bottom line to it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Dennis, of course, that's certainly your opinion. I'm going to play it down the middle here.
You always have.
Yes, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. And I appreciate you coming on the air with me today to give your side of the story. And I'm sure that we'll be hearing from the listeners of the program in a little bit, and we'll get their opinions as well. And I'll certainly get a copy of this program out to you on
appreciate
Tuesday.
It.
And listen, Dennis, best of luck to you, and we'll talk to you real soon.
It's always my pleasure, man.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
This is my favorite quote of this whole episode. Is it happens early. I'm going to call it down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
As you are littered with ECW promo spots, and as you call the NWA a defunct thing, as you talk about the excitement of ECW and how you can't miss it. And I'm not saying any of that's wrong, but it's funny because, for one, you are struggling a little bit to call it down the middle as a journalist, because you are so passionately in love with this product. And this guy's trying to be like, what they did was shitty. And you're like, but it was also really cool. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but I was also always a fan of the tradition of the NWA. So I did have a lot of respect for what the lineage of that title was, and even the initials, the name of the organization. So yeah, that was the difficult part for me, not wanting to see it dead and buried.
Yeah.
But knowing that it was on its last breath, but it's still alive. If you look at what's going on even today with Billy Corgan, it is a traditional belt, but yeah, it was difficult for me to play it straightly down the middle. But I was a huge ECW fan.
Yeah.
At that time, and still is. It makes me want to go on. I guess if it's on Peacock, to watch some of those 1994 episodes.
Yeah,
if you can find them on there, I'm sure that they have to be up on Peacock, right?
I'm pretty sure that most of it is. Yeah.
You know what? Another observation, listening back to the clips, don't they sound so much better since we left NYG?
Just the audio, of it?
just the quality of the tapes, and sounds like real radio.
Yeah,
and the other place sound like this echo chamber of bullshit. So
I do think the call-ins are a little more muffled. The voices, the audio balance is a little off, but just the overall clarity is there.
Yeah, and the audio balance actually shoots up into like almost intolerable when there's a commercial that GBB is playing. Like some of their spots, it just all of a sudden it just like bursts. I don't know how to even control that. That's on the original tape. So sometimes I got to get up and run to the machine and lower the volume on those commercials, and then try to crank it up, because then I sound so low. But overall, I mean, when we're doing these clips with Donnie and with Dennis, and I noticed it last week and this week, that the clarity is just so much more enjoyable and listenable than what NYG was.
Yeah, for sure. Is this is your physical space more or less than the other one?
Oh, much larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a much larger studio with several microphones and the computer system and the phone lines. It was just, and then access to the control room in front of you, and even another small production room with a window that was on the other side I could look into as well. But it was like it was real radio. It wasn't in a little house. It was actually in an office building that they owned, and they had 3 radio stations running out of there at the time.
That makes sense. There's after you do this spot about your Weekend of Champions 5 coming up, you're trying to get Paulie on the phone, and you're handing someone a phone number, and then they're trying, and you're kind of like saying, maybe we'll go to callers, and you end up going like, oh, never mind, here he is. Like,
yeah,
you can hear a little more activity that sounded like it was a proper setup.
Yeah. I had an engineer, and I had kind of an intern in there helping me as well.
Yeah. Weekend of Champions 5, one day only. It's going to be from 2 to 6. There's early bird specials now. You had deals and price packages, man. They were coming through.
Yeah. I'm still very curious to find out what happened, because I don't remember. I know it didn't happen. So
do you think there's any chance a small thing took place that day?
I don't think so.
Because it was only 4 hours, one day. Would you even thought about it the same way?
No.
Oh, we'll see. Oh,
we'll see. I mean, it's just kind of like I was hoping that I get more clues in the following episode that I uploaded with Scholar on it, but it didn't. I was just promoting it even heavier.
Wow.
So the fucking the floor. What do you call those things when you fall through the floor? The drop floor.
Oh,
whatever,
the trap doors.
Trap door is gonna fucking open up in the next few weeks, and I'm gonna fall right through it.
You talk about your ECW bus trip, and then you have a conversation there where you can tell that Paulie is screening his calls because it goes to the voicemail or does this or that, and and you're like, this is definitely a working number. Like you couldn't have been more confident about that number.
914-723-5909 was his number back then.
Yeah. You think it still is?
No, it's not.
I mean, try it. Yeah,
but I don't know why I remember that number out of all these years later. It just comes to the top of my head because I used to call him all the time, and that was his number.
Yeah, well, and then back then also you had to remember numbers to begin with, so that was one that got committed quick.
Yeah, but that was always I just can never understand why. If I can't remember what happened a Weekend at Champions 5, but I could fucking snap my fingers and have Paulie's phone number in my head.
That's kind of cool, though. So you're having all those issues with the audio and getting the live thing going. So when Paul gets on the phone, he says you're having more issues than the NWA today. And then he wants to know what Corralluzzo told you, and you kind of run down. You say he called it a double cross, and he goes, "That's correct. The NWA double crossed us." And then he said it shows how weak the NWA is if Dennis is their spokesperson, because they have a spokesperson that they haven't paid and they need to pay him and have him on the phone. It was kind of nuts.
Paul wasn't pulling any punches. He was spinning it in the exact way he wanted to.
Yeah. And he was saying that part of the decision came down. Like, why would we spend all of our time trying to resurrect a dead company when we can spend all that time and energy into just taking ourselves national? And again, that's a clip that we've heard before, so I don't have that one here, but we have other ones coming up. This one's about the NWA representatives, and followed up by what his relationship is with Jim Crockett, because I thought that was notable.
Mm-hmm.
We knew they were in business together without being in business together, and then they kind of split.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's representatives who are all dinosaurs and are all thinking in the past and in their wildest dreams have not had 1/3 of the effort nor 1/10 of the investment that ECW has had in this NWA project in the past year.
Do you think that the actions of ECW last week, however, might wake up different people that are on the board of the NWA? Crockett, there's guys out, I believe, overseas. There's Ricard, and now Dennis was on the show stating that he was talking to other potential promoters to get actively involved in the NWA.
That's Dennis's big problem. Dennis always talks to other promoters and tries to get them to jump on a bandwagon, which he has already jumped on, so therefore he can be part of something big. Dennis never went out and did anything on his own. Dennis never went out and did something and said, this is a Dennis Corralluzzo thing. This is my thing. I went out, I stake my own claim. I fight my own battles. I do my own thing. Dennis always has to live off other people's television, other people's sweat, other people's hard work. And if Jim Crockett Jr. or Steve Ricard or Larry O'Day or any potential member of the NWA truly gave a damn about the future and the sanctity and the honor and the dignity of the National Wrestling Alliance, why would they have a jerk like that on their board? Here is a guy who at the NWA convention in Las Vegas last year laid down in the room wearing shorts and a T-shirt that was 3 sizes too small with his belly hanging out and laid back because he got tired during the meeting and halfway fell asleep. And Jim Crockett Jr. turned to me during the NWA convention last year in Las Vegas and said, boy, look at what the NWA has come to. And now all of a sudden these people want to portray themselves as a closely knit unit and friends. It's all BS. And that's all it ever is.
Paul, what's your relationship with Jimmy Crockett? You guys were talking about World Wrestling Network a while ago, and you and Jimmy go way back. I'm sure you respect Mr. Crockett. What is your relationship with him at this point?
I hold Jim Crockett in the highest regard. He wanted to go his way, and I wanted to go mine. Jimmy Crockett felt that the way to go with wrestling would be to where, as his initial TV taping showed, a lot of people with vast experience and a lot of people who would learn from these people with vast experience, and really not a lot of middle ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's always had his way of running things traditionally throughout his career. And I think the ECW direction is certainly a 1990s way to look at pro wrestling, and the devoted followers that you have that come to the ECW matches. They're very loyal fans, but it's a different type of product. It's a more extreme style of product. As I mentioned to you on the telephone earlier today, it's like the fans that go to that arena would go to war with, for ECW, you know?
Oh, they'll go to war for us. Well, yeah, you were saying that they'd come out with the bayonets and everything, go charge. They would. We have a fanatical fan base, and it's extreme. And when I came aboard ECW, they had a big banner in the arena. There's only one banner at the time in the arena, and it said ECW, it's not for everybody. And I turned to Todd Gordon, I said, that sucks. I said, you can't say that. You should be for everybody. You know, you want everybody. You want millions and millions of people to come into your arena. And he goes, no, we're not for everybody. And you'll see that as you go on. And as the concept of ECW grew and grew and grew, and as we came through the night, the line was crossed this year with the 3-way match that went 1 full hour, and the press conference that followed, and all the different things, and the Public Enemy's rise to fame, and all the way over to Mikey Whipwreck. I mean, it just, everything is done to the extreme in ECW, and it's not for everybody. I mean, we acknowledge that now. I mean, and I understand what he meant by the concept. It's not for everybody, and but for those who it is, it's really for them.
It's a good analysis.
Yeah, I liked that. I think it was cool too. Didn't Todd talk about that? The ECW's not for everybody, and that being a point of contention until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was unlike anything that had been out there in the United States, this promotion and what they were doing. That's what made it so unique and so special.
Yeah. And we played a clip a couple months ago where because it was a year ago, we were doing just a couple months ago, where Paul had gone to the convention that he talked about here and had mentioned he didn't want to name names at the time, but that there were slobs there, and that the NWA was not happy.
I guess we know who he's talking about now.
Yeah, now he went ahead and said this is who I was talking about, which I thought was great because, I mean, like we said before, this was clearly festering for quite some time. And
yes,
he could tell the NWA was in disarray just from being at that event, you know? So,
and then all the other stuff that was alleged that Corralluzzo was doing.
Yeah, well,
then there's all of that. So yeah, so it was several months of this happening, and now it exploded, and here we are.
I wonder if NWA had cut ties with Corralluzzo, if this would have ever happened. You know, if it was just a different U.S. representative that they had used, who was easier to work with, if ECW would have remained the same. I mean, it was already different, right? But if they wouldn't had trashed the NWA thing, you know?
Yeah, speculation, who knows? You know, Dennis was passionate about that belt and having the opportunity to become on the board of directors, even though it was like, I probably could have got on the board of directors at that point, you know? And even Scholar brings it up on the next episode on how he believes in the NWA and the title, and he wouldn't mind doing something in Mexico or, you know, with the NWA. So anyway, yeah, we'll follow it up with Scholar next week when he gets on his rants about everybody and everything. So yeah, some fascinating listening we have coming up.
You asked Paul how close he is to expanding into the New York market. He mentions he's really close to closing a deal to get on MSG1. And says that the people over there love the ECW product as it is, and that they believe that once someone sees it, they're going to get hooked. And you said, yes, it's easy to get hooked. So, yeah. How long did they have a run?
How long were they on MSG?
Yeah.
They were on for a good number of years.
Yeah.
It wasn't an in and out thing, but the only problem, at least initially, was the time slot. You know, you're brokering your time. It's much cheaper after midnight. And I believe it started at 1 a.m. initially.
Yeah.
Which was still expensive, but it was not prime time.
Yeah, no, for sure. You guys get into the callers. And Paul has a good time with the callers. One of the things I love about your callers that is so evident here is that you can be very adamant about this is who we have on, this is what we're talking about,
right?
And they're still going to call in and ask about whatever the fuck they want.
Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, they go like, "Who do you think's going to win in the Survivor Series?" And you're like, "We're not even there yet." Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one thing that used to annoy me more than anything else. Is when you have a guest on, direct your question to the guest or the topic. But people just didn't care, and they would just talk. And I didn't want to disrespect people, but you know, it would get me. It would get my blood boiling a little bit when it happened when we had a guest on.
Yeah, it was crazy. I'm trying to see. I don't think I even clipped it, but there was one woman who called in asking about stuff, and then ultimately said, "Hey, we have Shane Douglas here." She goes, "Oh, I just don't know him." He goes, "All right, then call next week." Like, fuck. Like, it's just weird. You wonder if they're listening when they're calling, or if they just have the timer set to now's the time to call.
Yep.
You know. So this is 3 callers back to back because I thought it was a nice little rapid fire here with Paul.
Why don't we go to Mike from Queens as our first caller?
Hey, I got a couple of questions. Paul, you answered my question about the MSG network. I was wondering when you were going to come. I have a question for Jim. I heard the Ultimate Warrior was coming out with a movie. When is that going to be?
Well, as far as the Ultimate Warrior goes, he had done a movie which went right to video.
Oh, and what was the name of that?
I don't even know. Paul, do you have any idea?
I think it was something like a Bad Movie.
Yeah.
Bad movie.
Bad movie.
And who's the surprise that Dusty Rhodes is going to have next week?
The big fat splotch on his belly.
Yeah, what's on his next surprise, right? That he lost some weight or gained some weight, huh? And why don't you guys try signing the Ultimate Warrior?
Why don't we?
Yeah.
We believe in quality matches.
All right, listen, thanks for your call, Mike. 955-1240.
Mike's an intelligent listener. He didn't even know your own first name.
I know, he called me Jim, I think. Maybe
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Ross, maybe. 955-1240 is the number to
Jim
call.
Ross. Is this you, Jim? Hey, Jim, watching football. Yeehaw!
Let's go to Matt from Jericho. Matt, you're next.
How you doing?
Hey, Matt, how are you?
All right.
Hey, just wake up.
Paulie.
What?
How you doing?
Why?
I don't know, just curious. Let me ask you something. I live in New York. How can I get some tapes at the ECW?
Call the ECW hotline, 215
Right.
544-0421. Once again, that's 215-544-0421.
And
just say that you'd like some information on how to receive tapes and mail order stuff, and they'll send you all the information.
They'll send me all the stuff?
They better.
I hope
Or
so.
they'll hear from me.
I don't want to come down there and kick a little ass, you know?
Yeah, or just come down anyway.
All right.
John has a big bus he's going to rent down.
Yeah, we're going down.
Everybody
We're going down there September 17th to
Who's franchise
ECW.
he's wrestling Too Cold Scorpio that night?
Yes.
Is he?
Yes.
All right.
All right, Matt. Anything
Thanks a
else?
lot.
Thanks a lot for your call.
All right.
955-1240 is the number to call here at the program, and we're also going to have some discussions as far as one of our sponsors, LNS Comics, is interested in being a distribution outlet for ECW tapes, merchandise, and you'll be hearing
They should be.
more about that on the program. We're going to head over to Staten Island now, Paulie, and talk to Dave from
Yes,
Staten
John?
Island. Yes, Dave.
Yes, I just got two questions. Number one, who is the masked man that appeared to nail Hulk Hogan at the Clash?
Arn Anderson.
And what you know anything about the Survivor Series? Maybe anything involving the British Bulldog?
I'm sure that he'll be on the card.
Okay, thanks for your time, John.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
A lot of ECW questions. 955-1240 is the number to call here, Paul, and I know it's Sunday afternoon for you. And hello. Hey, it's been a long time since we've done radio. The last time you did a show with me, I guess, was WEVD, and we got more hate mail from that than any other show we've ever
Well,
done.
that's because of that sheriff that had the car auction who had the enema.
Yeah, you remember that?
All too well.
955.
Did you lose that guy as a sponsor?
Yeah. 955-1240 is the number to call here at the program.
Sheriff Grimaldi,
Yeah.
the guy who had the enema.
Yeah. I like how he laughs at you. It's just a good brick of calls where the only ECW question to come through is, why don't you sign Ultimate Warrior and where can I get the tapes? Like, ridiculous. He's on the brink of something huge. He just launched a whole new federation that's on fire. He kills it NWA. And the first question is, wasn't Warrior going to be in a movie?
Yeah.
Frustrating. Is Sid going to come back?
This is classic.
Yeah. Mike from Medford calls in. He said he was reading a thing where Cornette wants to kill Rob Feinstein because he said that he was bootlegging videos and not, so he didn't want people to go to him. Paul responds with, Feinstein's not associated with ECW at all, and he doesn't purchase from him at all. And so the guy said, do you not want people to buy from him? And he says, I don't care. And he took a really political stance on it in that, it's the right of the consumer kind of concept. Knowing what
I think they were in business together. I think they were.
You think they were?
I think they were. Because I'm pretty sure Feinstein did some business with them on merch or videotapes or something.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of wondering because I know that he's had a few controversies surrounded him at different times, and I didn't know if this was one of those times that he was trying to distance from him.
Oh, you mean like, the really bad stuff that happened?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when the bad stuff came out.
Yeah, it wasn't at this time period. I think it was a little further out.
Yeah.
I don't know the specific year that went down.
I feel like it would have been later too, just because I feel like did it happen? You'd have said something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he did seem like he was distancing himself, and I thought that was curious. But also doesn't care if people buy from him or not. So maybe they did get in business at some point. We got Paulie dangerously talking to Mike from College Point.
Mike Johnson.
Do you think they still can get an interview? Do you think Mike Johnson still gets hold of him? Do you think you're its primary contact?
What do you mean?
I wonder if Mike from College Point, if Mike Johnson, after you went off the air, ever really got a chance to talk or ask him any questions again. Because I wonder if your show made these people that accessible to guys like him even, Not that he was doing full-on interviews, obviously, but...
Mike was just really getting started. I mean, so he always credits Pro Wrestling Spotlight and the radio show and for really getting his passion and love for the inside of the business fired up. But yeah, I'm curious to know that once we went off the air, Mike was ready to dive into the business, and obviously still is in it and does a wonderful job with everything that he does. Great journalist, but I don't know. That answer to that question. Do we have the call?
We have the call right here, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it on the other side. Let's
Okay.
see.
Why don't we go to Mike from College Point?
Why don't we?
Mike,
John.
yes.
How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Pretty good. Paulie, let me just say I've been to all the house shows since When Worlds Collide, and I've never failed to be blown away.
Oh,
Cool, ain't it? All I have to say is the first time I walked into the ECW arena, one of the franchisettes said to me, "You'll be back. It's addictive," and I can't argue with that one.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I get tapes of the TV from someone I met up there. It's fantastic.
It's not Rob Feinstein, is it?
No,
Oh,
absolutely
because Jim
not.
Cornette doesn't like him.
Oh, no?
We all know if Jim Cornette doesn't like you, you got to die or something.
Yeah, you gotta die. But I thought Jim doesn't like you.
Who cares?
Oh, okay. The one question I had was, is Terry Funk still with you guys?
I don't know, is he?
Well, you asked me. He wasn't at TV, and he missed the last house show. And as far as
He
I know,
wasn't. Terry Funk wasn't scheduled for television.
excuse me.
He wasn't scheduled to be at television.
Oh, okay.
He
Because I
was only
that they had
scheduled to
announced that.
Jack against the Public Enemy at the last show, and Terry missed his plane and called in like the gentleman that he is, like the businessman that he is. He called in and informed us that he had missed his plane. He was trying to get on another one, but he probably wouldn't be able to make it. And we offered refunds at the top of the show and blah 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 blah.
And not one person got one.
Huh?
And not one person got up.
Now one per. Oh, who's going to get up from one of our shows?
Not from Mike. I mean, come on, Mikey Whipwreck. You can't argue with that.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
What are you watching? The Bodyguard in the background or something? Hey, Whitney Houston.
My mom's listening to some Whitney Houston CD.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
downstairs. I don't have my portable phone.
She's blasting it, huh?
Paulie took it.
But anyway, Mike, I appreciate your call,
No problem, John.
and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, Terry Funk, is he going to be back at with ECW at any time in the future?
I would hope that he is. I haven't heard to the otherwise yet.
Mm-hmm.
I
I'd assume that the original Evil Clown, or maybe not an Evil Clown any longer, in Extreme Championship Wrestling will be regular with you guys?
Hardcore Matt Bourne. See, Shane Douglas has already started his transformation of the entire wrestling industry in one day. He took the original Doink, he took the original Clown, he took the original Circus Meister and turned him into a hardcore wrestler. In one day, hardcore Matt Bourne went from being a Doink to being a hardcore athlete. In one day under the guidance of the franchise Shane Douglas. Imagine what he's going to do for the whole wrestling world in a matter of months.
Do you remember seeing Mike at any of the shows?
Mike Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on a few of the bus trips as well.
Yeah. Did you ever get him backstage or anything?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't getting in. He wasn't in the business at that time. He was just really a fan.
Yeah.
So he was just really getting started. But on that call with Paul, with the Terry Funk discussion, first of all, there was always rumors that Terry no-showed because of what they were going to do to the NWA title, which he was a proud holder of.
Yeah.
And that caused a little bit of a rift. And then when it died down, Terry returned. But he did miss that big show, and he did miss TV. So there was something there that Paulie certainly is not disclosing, understandably. But that was always the scuttlebutt that Terry was not wanting to participate in something like that.
Wow.
And I'm sure that they disclosed to Terry, because of his stature in the business, in a roundabout way, what they were planning.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder if he would have reached out to anybody or would have just said, let it be whatever it's going to be, and kept his nose out.
I think that's what it was. Because he was friends with Corralluzzo as well.
Yeah, but in the earlier, Corralluzzo said that he'd been told by people that they'd known weeks in advance. I wonder if he called Terry, and Terry said that. Because the other thing is that, of course, Paul is here saying that, he doesn't know. Terry just missed a flight. That's all that was. Because he couldn't say that they had told him, because Shane's story and Paul's story is that Shane decided in the ring to do that.
Yep. Yeah, that was the storyline.
Yeah. Huh.
It's the wrestling business. It's a swerve industry.
What's real?
Nothing is real.
But this is kind of cool, kind of interesting. Maybe Terry was the guy. maybe after the fact, Dennis called Terry and said what, and he's like, "Look, man, I knew, but what am I gonna do?" You know?
Yeah, interesting. Can't
So,
talk to any of them, unfortunately.
No. Yeah, and then I also remember the story from before that Terry Funk wasn't going to be there. They told people at the beginning of the show, if you want a refund, come up right now, and that not a single body stood up.
No.
Which is really cool because it speaks more to the strength of the ECW brand it was building. Where I know some people might take it as that Terry Funk wasn't the draw. And in this environment, he wasn't the draw. He was a draw, right? Like, people were here for the whole package.
Yeah, from start to finish of the show. It was from the minute 911 would enter that ring, typically in the beginning of a show, and choke slam somebody. And I mean, it was just kind of the way these shows were put together from start to finish. It was one big storyline every single week, every single month, rather.
Yeah. I think it's cool. Let's see. That was kind of the end of your little stint with Paul. Briefly after that, he gets going. You have another Doink spot, a Shane Douglas spot. You bring on Matt from the Hot Corner because he's doing a signing with like 7 or 8 guys next Saturday. Do you remember him at all?
No.
No, just a local guy doing a thing.
If there was a little, if I would always promote an autograph show, and sometimes I was even too kind to these people because they never reciprocated by advertising on the show. But I would for the fans, if you had an opportunity to meet some guys and here's where they're going to be, here's the time, here's the place. Yeah. I felt that was part of what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. People are going to you to find out what they can get, and it was a nice little signing. I didn't write them all down, but there was like 7 or 8 notable.
Yeah, they had quite a bit of ex-WWF performers, some Hall of Famers that eventually made the Hall of Fame, rather. Yeah. But, I was kind of doing a public service there for the fans.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell if you had called him or if he called in because you were trying to get Shane at the time, and you didn't have Shane yet. So you were killing some time. So I wonder
I probably had somebody call him and get him on because I knew he wanted to promote the autograph show, and that was just kind of good time to do it because Shane was doing an interview at the same time simultaneously with Mike Tenay and the Wrestling Insiders. That's why Shane didn't join with Paul.
Yeah, and I love Mike Tenay. Did you ever interview Mike Tenay on your show?
I don't think I ever did.
I think you guys
I knew Mike. I was friends with Mike, obviously, but knew Mike from the 70s.
Yeah.
But I don't think he ever appeared as a guest on the show.
When was the first time you ever met him?
Geez. It was probably as a correspondent or pen pal or something in the 70s because he had a newsletter out back then. Oh, and you got his newsletter? Yeah, he had a newsletter, and I had the Blassie fan club. So, there was a nice little community of people that used to kind of write each other and send each other samples of their newsletters. So it was kind of a pen pal thing in the beginning.
That's cool. That's really neat. I didn't realize you guys went back so far, but that's great. Let's see. You start taking callers to kill some time. You get Chris from Queens asking, is WCW in a position to take on the WWF, like head to head? And you said that you think that they are, but that you can't count Vince out. Never count out Vince.
Yep.
And I thought it was funny at the end. He goes, by the way, have you joined any online services like Prodigy or America Online? And you goes, I've thought about it. And he goes, okay. Like, that was it. All he said was,
that was just the infancy of those things like AOL, dial-up, internet.
No one even called it AOL at the time. It was America Online. It was before we abbreviated it.
You've got mail.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember those days. And then I had something called Web TV.
Web TV? Nice.
Yeah, it was actually connecting to the internet via your television with this Web TV service.
I wonder if that was like some of the beginning eras of cable internet.
It was kind of just a portal to get on the internet that you'd watch on your TV because it wasn't hooked up to your computer.
Yeah.
Hence the name Web TV.
Yeah. But I wonder if that was kind of a precursor to what would become cable, because maybe they'd have moved better there. I don't know. I remember Netscape was our big browser.
Yep.
But then you bring on Georgianne.
Georgianne Macropolis, yeah.
She breaks some incredible news on this one.
Okay.
I love it.
955-1240 is the number to call, and we'll go to Georgianne Macropolis, who now joins us. Georgianne, are you there?
Yeah. Hi, John.
How you doing?
Fine, honey. Welcome back.
Well, I certainly wanted to, bring you on because you published a Wrestling Chatterbox, which is one of my favorite publications, and I appreciate your kindness all the time to me.
Oh, well, thank you. We just had our 50th issue, and in case there are some people listening that don't know what we're about, we have more or less the personal look at wrestling. I just got a fax for you people that don't know Friday that Monty Kipsop, who is Billy Gunn from the Smoking Guns, just became a new daddy. They have a son named Austin. And Razor Ramon and Roddy Piper's wives are both expecting, and Johnny B. Baird just got married. So we give you all these kind of little things that you don't get in other newsletters. We're more on the personal trend, and we're doing very well. It's something that I have fun with.
Well, you've certainly been in the wrestling business. For those of you out there who are not familiar with Georgianne, you've been in the wrestling business for a long, long time.
Too many years.
Well, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, right?
That's true. We can be more critical.
But the Chatterbox is certainly a great publication, and I'd like you to give the listeners out there a plug of the Chatterbox.
Sure, John. Okay, they can write to Georgianne Macropolis, and that's the Wrestling Chatterbox, and the address is 23-44 30th Drive, and that's in Astoria, New York, 11102-3252. And as a special for your listeners, if they want a sample, that's usually $2.50 a month. But if they say that they heard about it on the radio, I'd send them one for $1, because our postage is usually 75 cents. We're normally 26 pages or better.
Okay. What?
And we had, like, the wedding of Ric Flair in the newsletter. We had the pictures of Cactus Jack's 2 babies, Pierre at the age of 15, Kevin Sullivan playing basketball. Kevin Nash. It's all the really personal stuff that we just love letting the people know about, that they won't read about at any other sheet.
That's certainly true. And Georgianne, I wish you continued success with the Chatterbox. And also, I know you have a Bruno Sammartino record book as well.
Yes, I do.
So those fans of Bruno can certainly get a hold of you if they're interested in those items. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you real soon.
Okay, John. We have a lot of other things coming up. I'm very excited about Underground Newsletter. We've got 6 newsletters put together. And, in the weeks to come, I'll tell you about a lot of exciting things going on.
Okay, Georgianne.
Okay, hon?
Good speaking to you again.
All right. Same here, John. And good luck.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye, honey.
Okay.
It's the nicest lady.
She is. I mean, she was somebody that everybody, hardcore fans, looked at like everybody's mom.
Yeah.
And when I first met her, I believe it was in 73, 72, 73, when I had the Blassie fan club going, and she was a fan club columnist for many of the newsstand magazines, and even meeting her for the first time, and you felt like you were meeting somebody that was very, very important in the wrestling business. And she was always well respected by everybody. There was never a cross thing anyone ever said about her. And she would always try to help. And I loved her slant on what she covered, which was the stuff you weren't going to read in The Observer or The Torch, or even on shows like mine, the personal lives of the guys and the behind the scenes photographs, and then her relationship with Sammartino and Buddy Rogers. And I mean, she was always instrumental in helping promote what I was doing. And she's the guy that she's the woman that hooked me up with Buddy Rogers. And she's the one that introduced me to Bruno to get him on my radio show. So, I mean, I owe a lot to her. And she was the nicest person ever.
Yeah.
In this business, the nicest.
I love that she mentions the birth of Austin Gunn.
Yes. Isn't that something?
I was crazy to hear that. I was like, oh my God. And then to think about where they're at now.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, and to be honest, the other thing I thought was like, I didn't realize he was 29. I thought he was, I don't, not to say
Younger.
that's old. I thought he was even younger. I thought he was like
thought he-
22, 23.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. So hearing that he was born, also like, oh wow, a little older than I thought.
Yeah.
The marriage of Johnny B. Bad.
Yeah,
That
to Rena.
Yep, that'll come back later.
Sable. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, she was something else when I met her when we did his appearance at LNS Comics and getting to know him. And he did a live remote at EBD. And she was just a knockout, you know.
Yeah.
This was
Was she
pre.
friendly?
She was businesslike.
Okay.
But friendly. But and this was when, you know, this was pre-enhancement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she became, you know, just larger than life.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Puppies.
Yeah. She played quite a role.
She certainly did. She's
She's
still with Brock Lesnar, isn't she?
So far as I know, yeah, no one's willing to talk to her anymore.
Oh,
Out
no?
of fear for their lives to even
yeah,
look at
well.
her.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite stories that Mark Merrow had told, that when he first heard that she was seeing someone behind his back, he was like, who is it? I'll kill him. And then they come to find out it was Brock, and he kind of goes, I wish them the best of luck.
Yep. Take care now.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. And I just always like to play Georgianne because she did only pop up here and there, and it's just nice to hear her, you know?
Mm-hmm. It was a nice distraction from everything else that was going on these shows. Typically,
Yeah.
it was folksy.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. You talk LNS, Shane Douglas, and Cactus Spot. You're putting over a thing that's coming up, and you refer to the evil power twin. Did they split at some point, or were you just calling them evil?
It could have been a little sabbatical from each other. I don't know.
Yeah. It was good.
I guess we'll find out because he comes on the show in a few weeks.
Oh, great. Yeah, I look forward to that. Like you probably look forward to it.
Yeah, I'll try to bring him on so we can review the show with him. See how that goes.
We'll just have to play like one clip and then insert it later.
Yeah.
Let's see. Then you get back to the callers. And I thought this was good. This was the first mention you had of Alundra Blaze since being back.
Let's go to Staten Island and talk to Ken. Ken, you're next.
Hi, John.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very good.
I'm just wondering if you could tell me the direction the WWF is going to take with women's wrestling, because the bout at SummerSlam sort of ended on a note where Bull might be leaving. I don't know. I mean, she lost the match. And
that was a surprise, Bull losing that match. But then again, it made good business sense for the WWF to put over their women's champion in such a fashion. I certainly hope that their direction with women's wrestling is to bring more and more women into the fold. I think Alundra Blaze, formerly Medusa, is a great competitor. Bull Nakano, who they brought in to feud with her over the last several weeks, is certainly one of the finest that Japan has to offer. I certainly hope that Vince McMahon and the WWF will continue pushing women's wrestling by bringing others into the fold.
Yeah,
why not start a tag? Yeah, why not get a tag team championship with women?
Yeah, bring back the Jumping Bomb Angels.
Oh, there's plenty. Especially if they're going to do a talent exchange with All Japan Women over in the Orient, they will get some mighty fine talent here in this country, which is going to turn a lot of heads.
Yeah, although I don't know if the Japanese women are going to like the idea of them coming to the United States just to be a stepping stone for the American women.
Well, I hope that wouldn't happen as well. But as far as American women's talent, the field is drying up. There's not very many out there.
But do you think they'll be at the Survivor Series of women? Or?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. I certainly hope so. I hope that Alundra Blaze defends her title there against a new challenger.
I know. Okay, thanks, Sean.
All right, thanks for your call.
Bye-bye.
For more on this, listen to the Medusa podcast with Marsh.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's cool too. You also mentioned that you want to see tag team championship. It wouldn't come around for like 34 more years, but
yeah. Yeah, I was always an advocate for women's wrestling, and there was just a dry talent base because they weren't being promoted or pushed or used. in a way. And I thought that bringing Medusa in as Alundra Blaze would certainly open up that field even more. But we all know the struggles that she had to endure.
Yeah. What's also kind of ironic here is, speaking of the Medusa podcast, she just interviewed Sonny Ono, and that's up on her youtube.com/Queen of Carnage. Your idea here is basically what her and Sonny were able to get done with Eric Bischoff, which was bringing in a bunch of Japanese talent and running programs with them. And sometimes they were going over, sometimes they weren't. It wasn't because, like I was saying, you didn't know that the Japanese women just want to be a stepping stone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was even times where they brought in a Japanese title and Medusa was going for it, but that would come just a couple years later when she makes it to WCW. Your exact idea.
I was ahead of my time.
Yeah, you were. You could have managed. Did you ever get to talk to Sonny Ono?
No, I have
Really
not.
interesting guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
Yeah, he was like a world karate champion for a couple years. So, an unassuming badass.
I don't know if he attended any one of my conventions. He might have been at one of my conventions. Not as a talent, but just kind of hanging out.
Oh, just kind of wandering?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That'd be neat. But really good. Really cool. Let's see. Eric from Brooklyn. Paulie knows the direction wrestling is going. And you talked to him a little bit about the character development is one of the things you're most impressed about going on in ECW right now. And I've still heard that years later. Actually, notably, Sam Roberts brings that up on his podcast, that ECW is always thought of as because of the incidences and stuff. But when he goes back and looks at it, the character development to him is what was really notable.
Yeah, one thing about Paul and his booking philosophy was he was always looking long term. Like when he was developing a character, he had the start of it, the evolution of what that character was and where he saw that character going, several months to a year down the road. So that's what made him so brilliant to me, was the fact that he had a plan, and it wasn't like on the fly booking as you see today. I mean, I'm sure that there's some sort of plan when you're heading into a WrestleMania season or whatever. People are knowing several months in advance, but the way Paulie did it was really, really good. It was very groundbreaking at the time.
And I think that also, from what I can tell, he was always booking with, why would your character do this? Where sometimes it's up to the talent to put that together. Yeah. Like, I mean, I've heard Sammy in interviews talk about how, like, you're given this thing, it's like, this is the direction we're taking you, and he's had to figure out, why would my character go that direction? And then he works that into whatever little promos he's given. He'll slip in a little something or a little accent or just a line that's just enough to be like, this is why we're going that way. Where I think that, Paul was the one who was directing, this is why your character would do this. So that's pretty brilliant too. Especially when we see promoters just right turn these guys sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's why Paul is the wise man.
Yeah, that's true. You finally get Shane Douglas on. You ask him if he's got any regrets, and he says no. Dennis was on some show earlier that said that Shane had no-showed like 10 different promotions, and he told the story of the one that he clearly remembers not. And he goes, outside of that, he goes, if I tell you I'm going to be somewhere, I am. And it's just money and travel woes that he canceled on. So, and at one point they said they weren't going to give him a hotel. They could sleep on someone's couch. And he goes, I'm just not going to go. So yeah, that whole thing is in the Patreon, but this is a clip of Shane Douglas kind of, as everything's kind of settling out, how he feels about what went on and what's going to be going on,
How have you felt a week after the event took place?
As the dust has settled, John, and I say that tongue in cheek because I've been deluged with phone calls for radio shows like yours and the Wrestling Insiders, and from newspapers around the country, USA Today, even some producers in Hollywood have called wanting to know exactly what transpired. As the dust is settling, I feel better with what I did because it was
on the spur of the moment action. It was after 12 years in the sport. It was nothing personal to Dennis Corralluzzo. It wasn't like I went into the ring and thought, I'm going to get Dennis for things he said about me. I wasn't going to go out there and get Jim Crockett or whatever. I simply went out there, and in the middle of the ring, accepting the belt, I decided that, some things had rung in my head that my father taught me as a young boy, and several books that I read through college. And I told you this in the interview last week, that you can either walk in the crowd and be one of many faces stuck in the crowd, or you can soar with the Eagles and set yourself apart. And as I accepted the belt and I looked toward heaven and had a little conversation with my father in the middle of the ring, I realized that with the type of wrestling fan that he was, and the type of wrestler that I tried to be in my career, I'd be a hypocrite to accept the belt that had been handed down from Ric Flair, one of the key participants that I think have taken wrestling down a very dangerous path in the early 1990s and 1980s, too far into the realm of entertainment and cartoons and whatnot. And I just thought it was time for ECW, and at least for myself, today in 1994, it's fashionable, I guess, to say come out of the closet. Well, I'm not going to come out of the closet in the traditional sense of the term, but I came out of the closet and I've come clean of being an entertainer. I'm no longer going to, let myself be termed an entertainer. I consider myself a wrestler and an athlete, and I think I made that very clear here last Saturday night. So I have no regrets.
Well, you've certainly worked for the major promotions in professional wrestling. You've worked with the WWF. You worked with WCW. Now you've become champion of ECW. This is the place you want to be, apparently.
This is it. I've 12 years in the sport. I started in early 1983. Wrestled around. By the time 1986, when I got my first break with the UWF, and they started calling me Rookie of the Year, I'd been in the sport for close to 4 years. So I guess that may be the longest rookie in world history. But I've worked 12 years hard and long in this business, and I've been screwed by people. I've had great opportunities and been given great opportunities in the ring and to showcase my talents. Had great opportunities to work with people like Ricky Steamboat, Steve Austin, and just scores of others in WCW and WWF. But I think in 1994, where I see the business going, where I see the sport going, is back to athletics. I've been involved in athletics since I was a kid, and I just think that it's time. And I think the response of the ECW fans, and not only ECW fans in Philadelphia, but around the country, has spoken clearly on that. I keep hearing from people saying, yeah, okay, well, you're fine. You're over in Philadelphia, and the fans are hardcore in Philadelphia, and they like the product. But what about here and what about there? Every time I go on a radio show, like the Wrestling Insiders or the other wrestling program out of Vegas that I did the other night, the phone calls that I'm getting, unanimous. I have not had one negative phone call yet. They're unanimous in saying that they believe that the ECW is the best. I think the last gentleman I spoke to said that he felt that it was the last best chance for American wrestling to make its comeback. And so those types of things get me excited. And yeah, I'm glad that I've stated before that if I make no other mark on this sport than with ECW, then I can retire whatever time down the road and be happy in what I've done.
He's so well spoken.
He is a very smart guy, school teacher.
Oh,
it's always a smart dude, not like when he was a dynamic dude,
right? Yeah.
But I was always a fan of Shane's. I just didn't think that he. I think he could have got further in one of the major promotions if the cards fell right for him. But he was also somebody that wouldn't take a lot of BS. He spoke his mind.
He always had his priorities in a way that didn't put wrestling as the end-all be-all of all things, and that may have ultimately hurt his career from taking it to higher levels. Our next clip, actually, he talks about it a little bit with his caller, so I won't dive in too deep, but
okay.
Yeah, I agree. Very impressed with his talking on this.
Yeah.
Carol from Oakdale is the one who calls in and asks if WWE's going to have a fan fest, if Raw's going to go back to Manhattan, and then says she doesn't know Shane Douglas. And so she said she has one more question. He goes, call back next week. Okay, we're trying to respect Shane here.
Exactly.
But yeah, the more I watch, like I said, I only got to see some ECW because I didn't grow up in that area and with those channels and stuff. So I kind of saw later Shane, and I don't remember his promos the same way as I'm watching stuff now and listening back on this and going back and watching these clips. I'm just more and more impressed with him. Like, he was an incredible talent.
He was a great talker, great promos, really good in the ring, had the good looks. You know, he had the whole package. He really did.
Yeah. It's not a surprise that all the company signed him at one point or another. It's just like you said, didn't quite time out. So on that note, Matt from Smithtown's going to call in, followed by Danny from Oceanside, who I thought was actually interesting. The Danny from Oceanside call, the way he asks what happened to your WWF career sounds a little shitty, and Shane still handles it perfectly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he almost sounds like he's being a little snotty brat with the way he asked it, you know? And Shane just answers like a pro.
Yeah.
So these are those two calls back to back.
Okay.
Let's go to Matt from Smithtown.
Hey, Shane Douglas?
Yes, Matt. How you doing?
Hi. I was wondering, who is like the most talented athlete in ECW that you've worked with so far?
In ECW?
Yes.
Several. I think Sabu is a fantastic wrestler. Terry Funk is a great competitor. You know, he showed me. I was sort of a detractor of his until I got into the ring with him, and I found out how tough he really was. I think he's certainly a testament to those people that are 50 years old out there still trying to make it in the sports world. People like George Foreman at 45 or whatever. Sabu, certainly Too Cold Scorpio's come in, and he's really surprised me with what he's done. I knew Too Cold in WCW. Thought that he was a good tag team wrestler. Didn't think much of him as a singles, but he's really progressed in the last year. Cactus Jack, I've not competed against him, but I think Cactus Jack has shown some real fire once again, and leaving WCW and coming to ECW. And I think Tommy Dreamer from New York there is showing some certain future coming up. You know, I think that he's really showing that he's going to be a great star one day. And I think the Tasmaniac is another one. You know, there's a whole deluge of talent, and that's what for me as a wrestler, I'm very excited about, being able to step into the ring with some great wrestlers. And not be bound down with the politics that's so prevalent today in some of the bigger organizations.
Have you been approached by any bigger organizations since you're running as champion?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the
You
question.
want to know if you've been approached by any of the major offices since going back to ECW, going into ECW?
I've been contacted by both, and WWF has contacted me several times about coming back. But I teach school during the week, and you know, I'm just like the man with two faces. You know, I'm able to walk on one side and be an educator during the week, and ECW fits very perfect into that schedule. I have no plans to go back on the road again full time. I did that for 6 years, almost 6 years straight, and really felt that I was spinning my wheels. When you're on the road, you know, being on the road sounds like a real neat thing for a lot of people until you've done it for about 3 or 4 months straight, and then suddenly living out of a suitcase, and Holiday Inns all look the same, and the food all tastes the same, and you miss your family and your friends. No, I like sitting here at my poolside and relaxing and working during the week and wrestling on the weekends.
All right, thanks for your call, Matt. The number is 955-1240. Let's go to Danny from Oceanside. Danny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I have 2 questions. Shane, I was wondering, what happened to your WWF career?
WWF, I had a 2-year contract with World Wrestling Federation, and they were just getting ready to do some things with me in music. I've been involved in music for quite a long time and really enjoy it. And Vince was ready to see if he could make a rock star, so he was going to try to put me as being a rock star with taking my musical talents. Jimmy Hart had written 2 songs. One was called American Girls, and the other one was called Rockin' Down the Halls, which were going to be a single and a flip side. They had some big plans in doing that, and down the road they had planned on putting Mr. Perfect and I together and calling us the perfect pair. At that time, however, my dad became very ill with emphysema, and I had to make a choice, staying on the road for 40, 50 days straight, and my dad possibly passing away, or going home and spending time with him. He lived alone, and was very necessary for him to have somebody around to go to the store for him to get his medicine and things. So I just put my career on hiatus. I didn't think that competing in the wrestling world was as important as taking care of my father. So that was the first reason I left WWF. You know, it was purely personal.
I got one more question. John, you're a fat fuck. You fucking...
Number to call, 955-1240, and let's go to Steve from Medford.
That was so nice.
I mean, just the pause. Number to call. Just move
I
on.
don't know what to say. I'm like, you get like, it's almost like you get shocked because it was it was a good call. He was very nice and polite.
Yeah.
And then boom, the hammer goes down and he says a disparaging thing and a curse.
Yeah. And a curse. And it's like, and for what? Like, why? What do you know what I mean? Like the other thing
I
is
was breathing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you afforded this little brat the opportunity to ask a wrestler a question and get an answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Even if I don't like a guy, like, so there's a promotion out here that sold recently, but the owner, he's not a great guy. He was not a nice guy. I didn't like him very much. But I went to a few of the events because he had brought in a few talent. Like one of the ones was like Foley.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw him, I'd always thank him for bringing them out and be nice, because why would I call him a bunch of names if I'm there taking advantage of a situation he put together? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it did give me like, this quick trigger finger on calls, and because it wasn't about them disparaging me or calling me a name. It was the obscenities. I mean, it was FCC rules. I mean, at that time, we were in the middle of a lot of government regulators finding stations if the F-bomb came out, and Howard Stern, of course, had all his problems with the FCC and millions of dollars in fines. So you always had to worry, would I get thrown off the air too?
Yeah.
And I don't think we might have had a delay, a 7-second delay, which you're required to have if you're a radio station. But was it being utilized, or was the engineer even aware on how to dump a call? But obviously it went through because we heard it.
Yeah, I wonder too, because I remember the last station. It was a big deal. They made a note when you guys got the delay. I don't remember if this station did.
EVD.
Yeah. Steve from Medford goes on. He says that Shane gives some of the best interviews of all time right now, just in the business. He's the best interview, and I mean, he's really well spoken. He likes that he challenged Flair. Shane says that he heard Ric Flair was pretty upset by the whole thing, but doesn't expect him or WCW or WWF to reach out, but that he meant it. He would happily take on Flair or Hogan or any of those. And just says that with ECW, what they're trying to do is get rid of a lot of that political stuff. He wants booking based purely on the experience of wrestlers and their expertise. And he talks a little bit about his shoulder injury and recovery, but I thought it was neat too, because he was talking about problems in the booking in those ones, the nepotism.
Mm-hmm.
You guys talk about the ECW fan base being insane and dead insane. At this point, they're just now Extreme Wrestling. How far out backwards do you think that fan base was becoming that rabid? Because we know for years they remained that way, all the way clear until today. A lot of those fans who grew up with that are still rabid.
It was really when Paul took over the book.
Right then.
And when he started integrating these storylines in a more violent nature, Public Enemy had a lot to do with it in the beginning, just with their character development, because they were ghetto, they brought violence into the ring. So it would continue, and then Sabu, obviously, with the risks that he took and the style and the presentation of what he did. Terry Funk, of course, blended right in. Mick Foley, certainly the beginnings of the hardcore Mick Foley. So it was all coming together, but it would be getting more and more extreme. And 94 to me with ECW was the sweet spot.
Yeah,
it really was. It was when things were really starting to emerge, and you had the Tommy Dreamer Sandman angle. You had Woman there, and then it just kept getting better and better. The Lucha integration, the Benoits of the world, the Malenko, it was just kind of this constant evolution. But it did become very, very extreme. 95, 96, it was getting more hardcore. And then when you bring in the gangsters, and I mean, it just, but it was cutting edge, and it was a promotion that really changed the business in so many ways.
Yeah, and I guess at this point, if you're a year in, because he'd been booking for about a year at this point, if I remember.
Close to a year, yeah, after Eddie left.
Yeah. Also, him coming in with Todd Gordon having the sign already up that ECW's not for everyone means they were starting to lean that way.
Yeah.
Probably Paul was the gasoline.
Yes. He ignited it. He took the idea or the concept and he just supersized it.
Yeah. And then you think that almost a year in, having a fan base that you guys know is that intense, probably made the decision to dump NWA even that much easier.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
They didn't need them.
They didn't need them. And then knowing the Terry Funk thing that same day, I bet you that was like such a clincher for them. If anybody wants to leave because we don't have Terry and not a single person, I'm sure they looked at each other and said, we're doing the right thing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
It's cool, man. It's just neat. It's neat, and it's lucky for the people who were able to be there in those moments and just see this thing growing for better or for worse, you know?
It was quite a community of those fans, and that grew every single month, and they were crazy. I mean, they even had their own personas, you know, a lot of the fans in that front row facing the camera, and the chants and the orchestrated chants. I mean, it was incredible time.
Yeah, that's neat, man. It's cool. I think a lot of people, especially who are in that crowd, I think a lot of the NXT fans think they're kind of an ECW style fan base.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I see and look at this stuff, like I think they're just so far removed from what the ECW fan base was, but they still have that fervor. They're going all the time, you know?
Yeah, unless you were there to really see it live in person. I mean, even the TV at the time was must watch if you could find it.
Yeah.
If you could find it. It was incredible. So anyone who was alive back then or had the opportunity to go and see this and was part of that Northeast fan base, and you were really treated to something that was extraordinary and historic in the history of the business.
That's cool, man. Eddie from South Brunswick calls in. He goes, you don't think Ric Flair is a wrestler? Because he keeps talking down on Ric Flair, and more or less, he says that he thinks it's time for him to retire, and he's embarrassing to watch, that it's the same match over and over again, and that he's just kind of more of a cartoon version of himself, and it's just crazy to think that this is 94. These conversations are going on. It's no wonder that by the time Flair got to Evolution with Triple H, I mean, they talk about how that was Ric Flair lost all confidence.
Yeah.
For the last 20 years of his career, you're being told that you need to retire and you're a joke. You know what I mean? You're not who you used to be. That's been pounded in his head since 93, 94.
Yeah, that was the last great work that Rick did, in my opinion, was Evolution.
Yeah.
That was kind of a magical faction.
Yeah.
That was way too short-lived.
I agree. Yeah, I thought that was great.
And kudos to Ric Flair here in Nashville, Tennessee. They do what they call the Walk of Fame. Here you have a star. And yesterday, Ric Flair was inducted by Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish, and of course, a great solo artist, a big fan of Ric Flair's, who collected some of his robes and bought some of his robes. And with the Nashville Visitors and Convention Corporation, Flair got his own place on the Walk of Fame here. Yes.
Did you go?
I didn't even know it was happening. I used to go every year because I used to be closely associated with the NCVC. Well, we were sponsors when I was the vice president of Black River Entertainment here. We were one of the sponsors of that platform. So, I didn't know. But, there's country legends that were inducted. And then I was very surprised to see that Ric Flair got his name on the Walk of Fame. And he looked a little, I saw it on the news this morning, and he had Band-Aids on his face. I don't know what the hell was going on. He looks very disheveled. So anyway, but congratulations to Rick to be part of the Music City elite.
Well, maybe one of these days you'll walk down there and see the little star. That'd be cool.
The Flair star?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take a picture. We'll put it up on Patreon.
Yeah. Get it in a magazine.
Probably the only wrestler ever to be given a star on the Walk of Fame.
You think Lawler doesn't have one?
I don't think so, no.
Wow. I know he's Memphis.
Funny story. I mean, digress. I mean, because I had been close to with Paul McCartney, one of the artists that I managed, Sarah Darling. We did a charity project in honor of women's breast cancer with a company called Reviver Records, and we did Sarah cut a version of Blackbird, the Beatles song Blackbird. And we were very close to actually getting Paul to do the ACM Awards. It fell apart. He took a date in Brazil or something, and but we had officially extended the invitation to him through the NCVC about coming to Nashville and getting a star on the Walk of Fame, but just could never work out. That was kind of a dream of mine that didn't happen. Yeah. But we're close.
Did you get to meet any of the Beatles?
No. I mean, that's my holy grail, McCartney. Yeah. That's the only person that in my lifetime that I would absolutely, that would put my life over the top. Just getting to shake his hand or take a picture with him and how much he meant to me. And it was close. In 2011, it got very close. I thought we were on the cusp. And he did through the Eastmans, who were his attorneys, he did enjoy Sarah Darling's version of Blackbird. And it really was it was a big song for her. We cut 3 different music videos of that. One in color, one in black and white, one live performance to distribute to the country music channels. But I know we're digressing here, but just mentioning the Walk of Fame and how that I still have the letters and all of that we were trying to put this together. And it was an amazing thing. So if you're out there on YouTube, just Google Sarah Darling Blackbird and you can see how great it was. And you'll be able to see me in one of those music videos.
That's cool. That's cool. Let's see, getting on track a little bit as we wind down the show. Rob from Medford asked what he thinks of Bret Hart and Sting as kind of like top guys in the industry in that moment. I thought that was really cool just to put them side by side that early. But he loves Bret, loves like everything about Bret. And he thinks that Sting needs to take off that face paint and become a wrestler and not a cartoon. He was very adamant about all that stuff.
Still.
Yeah. Yeah. That worked out. And the guy wants to know, the caller wants to know about if America's going to bring in Onita. And I thought that was interesting too. Like, just knowing what Onita was doing in Japan at the time with all that crazy stuff, and for him to see ECW and start thinking this could be the thing, it was kind of neat.
That would have been a good attraction if ECW was able to work something out with him. That would have been great.
Could have been for sure. You go over the ECW card, you do some ads. You get a call back from Brian from Belmore. He was the guy who's called the last couple of weeks about how to get into wrestling. He mentions he's 14. He asks if Shane Douglas might be able to train him. And you mentioned that Dominic DeNucci trained both him and Cactus, and he's training out in New York. So go to that school, This is the last clip we have. It's Steve from Brooklyn, followed by Mike from Lindenhurst. But yeah, it is what it is. I thought it was a nice way.
Callers.
We'll go to Brooklyn and speak to Steve. Steve, you're next.
Hi, John. Good to hear you again.
Thank you very much, Steve.
If ECW does get an MSG contract, are they going to plan to basically start from scratch as far as, introducing their characters? Because, I read the Torch and I know the characters a little bit, but I'm really not, I've never seen a tape. I've never seen an ECW show. And I think it would be a problem if they would start with assuming that everyone who watches the show knows who these people are.
Well, I spoke to Paulie about that off air. I've had several discussions about that, and they would be introducing the characters from. It would be a different show for the MSG network.
Now, do you think that it is going to happen pretty soon?
Well, from what they're saying, it could happen as the signing of the deal could happen as early as this week. obviously it's not written, and a contract has not been written up yet. So I think it'll happen within the next month or so.
I hope it does, because everything I read about the federation seems to be pretty good.
Yeah, and the thing is that everyone is I get calls every day. People don't want them in. All these promoters, everyone is fighting with each other, trying to cut each other's throat, and it's just best for the business. Everyone likes something different. It's like vanilla chocolate strawberry ice cream. You could like WWF, you could like WCW, you could like ECW, but I think everyone should be given a fair shot as far as promoting their product.
Well, I hope so. I did get to see once a Smoky Mountain tape, and I was actually very disappointed in it because I had read, good stuff about it in the Torch, and I thought it was pretty bad. I hope ECW is a lot better than that.
Well, ECW's TV, and I've watched it now. I watched like 6 hours of it this week to catch up a little bit, and it's certainly a very entertaining product. It's very cutting edge. It adds, there's a lot of music videos, there's a lot of features, interview segments, just the way the show is put together. Even though the production values, as far as the slick look that you may get from WCW and WWF show, is not there because they don't have the money to put into production. For what they're working with, it's certainly an entertaining program, and it hooks you, so you watch it every week, and that's what a TV series is supposed to be about.
Now, you said you watched it. Is it available in New York?
No, it's not. I received tapes.
Oh, okay.
I received tapes.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks for your call. Okay, we're going to go to Mike from Lindenhurst. Mike, you're next.
Hey, John, what's up? I was listening to Shane Douglas talk about, James bringing wrestling back to what it used to be, but ticket prices and everything used to be a lot cheaper. This is what wrestling is now. It evolved into this. You can't go back.
Well, the ticket prices there are pretty inexpensive.
And what about Razor Ramon? I heard he changed the name of his finishing maneuver from Razor's Edge to Adios, motherfucker.
955-1240 is the number to call here at the program. That's going to about wrap it up for telephone calls today.
You had it.
I knew that kid was going to say something. I could just tell in his voice. It was all those kids from Lindenhurst that used to give me the problems.
They got along over at school, and they're like, how are we going to get them this week?
Or Medford.
Medford.
I know if there was a Medford call or a Lindenhurst call, something was amiss. Something was going to happen.
Just finger right above the button.
Yeah. But you can just tell. You get an intuitiveness. And I had an intuitiveness. As soon as I heard it, even when I was uploading the show, I was like, this guy's going to say something. I could just tell.
Well, because they come in with this kind of like cocky swagger in their voice. Like they're so proud of what they're about to do.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah. Highlight of their lives.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, really loaded show there. You do go on, you finish up talking about how AAA hooked up with WCW and how you're going to have Ron on next week. One thing I wanted to ask you, because I keep hearing it and I keep forgetting to ask you, it says brought to you by Eastside Wrestling Enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
Was that your company?
Yeah.
That was just what you like LLC'd to...
Right, to do this rendition of the Spotlight.
Yeah. Was everything under that umbrella, your IWAS and everything?
No. IWAS was a different company.
Okay. I was curious.
And I had like Pro Wrestling Spotlight Enterprises, which was never really a legal LLC. I had Pro Wrestling Spotlight shows. It was just, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Just to have them, so no one else took them.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was just curious because I've heard that a few times. Eastside Wrestling Enterprises, and I don't know if you did much outside of that. Is that what your Weekend of Champions was under?
Yes.
Or was it? Okay.
The last one, for sure. And maybe the one that never happened. We'll find out in a few weeks, I guess, what's going on with that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, yeah, that was the show right there. It's pretty loaded. You put over Ron is coming on pretty soon. You sounded like excited about it, and you said it wasn't going to be one you wanted to miss.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, I was quite entertained when I was uploading the Scholar show.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun. It's going to be a very good listen, and I hope to get Ron on. I'd love to bring him on, and would be an interesting time during his run in wrestling to have him review a show like this. But yeah, I mean, we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to bring other guests on. I mean, it may not be going back 30 years or so, but this book right here, The Last Real World Champion, that just came out by Tim Hornbaker, who did the great Buddy Rogers book and all the other titles that he wrote, The Death of the Territories, and so many others. Tim is going to come on and discuss this Ric Flair book, because I started diving into it, and it's really good. We're reaching out to Al Snow about coming on. Vince Russo, I sent a message to, because I really would love to know what was going on in his life in '94. And our Patreon executive producer, Anthony Pyrus, ordered me to do that. So I'm reaching out
producer
to Vince and have him come on, because I think Anthony Pyrus and Vince Russo together would be a pretty entertaining podcast.
Day off for the both of us.
Yes. And we did have fun on the Zoom. You joined us on our Patreon Zoom call this past Monday. So everybody that joined us, that was great. Because this is kind of where we just kind of talk to some of the biggest supporters of what we do and try to get their insights and what they would like to see, because they're the most actively engaged with us when it comes to what are we going to do when the shows run out, which is really not long from now, 3 months, 4 months max. And then we got to decide if we're going to recycle all this stuff again, or we call it a day, or we do a subscription only model, or, it's still, all these things are going back and forth in our heads right now, what to do.
I'm going to have to get into full animation and just animate these so it's a cartoon.
Yeah, I want cartoon. I want everything to be cartoon.
Yeah. It's actually funny.
AI, you can do anything with AI now. So let's.
Wouldn't that be wild if we told the story and told AI to figure it out?
Yeah, we could do it.
Yeah.
And you could actually create characters. I mean, I don't even know what's real and what's not real anymore. When you're on TikTok and you're hearing, you're seeing Elon Musk, or you're seeing Trump, or you're seeing Biden and Trump cursing at each other. I mean, it's like, it sounds exactly like them.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing there was like this Beatles AI now, that there is a new song that was strictly AI of them harmonizing. And I was like, it was a shitty song. It wasn't Beatles. But I'm like, but it sounded like, I'm like, where the frig are we now? What's ahead for us? Why don't we do I always wanted to interview Vince McMahon. So why don't you create the AI character of Vince McMahon, and then I could finally do an interview with him, an AI interview. Or you could do an AI of me, and I can interview myself and ask what the fuck that I was doing all this time in the wrestling business.
Yeah. What's wrong with you 30 years ago? And you're like, I don't know, John. Like,
fascinating. We could bring Bruno back to life and ask him, what happened.
Did you see someone did an AI of Gorilla Monsoon if he had a podcast?
Oh, yes, I love that actually. He started putting up too many of them, but him with Bobby Heenan and this shit is like, it's incredibly funny.
Yeah, it was pretty decent. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, he had Russo's voice, Cornette and Russo together with him. I mean, it's crazy shit. I don't know the exact handle for this dude on Twitter, but I haven't seen them a lot lately. When was the last one you saw?
It was a while ago, but I don't know if I ever followed him. I would just see people when they posted it from time to time.
Yeah,
because like you, I thought there was a bit much, but I would enjoy picking one up here and there. So
yeah, that's where we're heading, man. We're heading into this world of what's real and what's not.
Yeah, we'll just start changing whatever happened 30 years ago.
I'm glad I'm my age.
Yeah.
Because who knows what's going to happen in 20 years from now or 30 years when I'm long gone.
It's going to be nuts. Well, when you're long gone, I'm going to AI recreate you And
Thank
I'll tell
you.
all about
Make
it.
me thinner.
Wait, John, it's been a few years since you passed. You've lost a lot of weight. How you been? Right.
And then you can do an AI version of my wife, which was Sybil Shepherd when she was in her 20s.
There you go.
And make me younger too in my 20s, so I don't look like a dirty old man. So mid-20s, me and Sybil Shepherd, husband and wife.
I don't see why not. Let's do it.
She was my everything back when I was a teenager. I loved her.
Yeah.
Do you know who she is?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the show that I watched with her. I think it was actually just called Sybil.
Yeah, she had that, and she had the show with Bruce Willis that was on for several years.
Yeah.
But what I just fell in love with her. She was in The Last Picture Show or something, black and white, Peter Bogdanovich.
Oh, wow.
And she was just gorgeous, and she was a Kodak model.
Huh.
So we used to have a little drugstore up the street from where we lived. It was called Doc's. That's where I used to buy my wrestling magazines.
Okay.
And there was a cardboard stand-up of her on a bicycle, like on the Kodak thing. And I had to have it. And when they were done with it, I got it and put it up in my bedroom.
So
and I finally got to meet her. I met her, actually. I interviewed her. When I was working for a radio station in Boston, I was producing a show called The Brad LeMac Show, and I get him celebrity guests. And I used that kind of as leverage. And I found out that she was a singer. She cut a few albums. And she was going to be performing at a club called Reno Sweeney's in New York City. And I was like, I got to meet her. This is my chance. So I went through the proper channels, a publicist, and lo and behold, I got an interview set up with her. She was promoting this new album. And it was in a hotel in New York City, right near Central Park. And tickets to the show, her performance as well. But the funniest thing happened, which was like just threw me through a loop. And I still can never forget it. And she had been married to a guy that was in the automotive business. And she just had a baby that she named Clementine. So when I went up for the interview and knocked on the hotel door, her husband, David Ford was his name, let me in. And she was in the bedroom, which was this big hotel suite, and I was going into the living room. When I looked, I turned my head, and she was there breastfeeding her baby.
Oh,
I almost dropped dead on the spot. And I was so nervous. I mean, she didn't see, it was a glance, whatever, but she was breastfeeding, and I'm like, holy shit, So I said,
you're already nervous, and now you're startled.
I'm startled, though. I almost had a coronary.
Yeah.
And then, did the interview, and then when I gave it to Brad LeMac, and he was on midnight to 5 a.m. on this station, and I used to get him great guests. I'd call up Vegas and Tony Bennett and this guy. Just call up people's dressing rooms in Vegas, find out who was in Vegas. And that's how I got all these guests. But I gave him the interview and the tape, and he says, I really can't play it. I was like, why? Can't play it. So I just can't, So I got a little upset. And when he went off the air, and instead of me playing the religious programming on tape, I played my Sybil Shepherd interview on the station, which I could have got fired over, but it was something I felt I had to do.
It was out of my hands, guys. I had to do it.
I still have it. I should put it up for patrons, actually.
The interview?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be great. How many of those interviews did you keep? Because you talk about that.
I got every one of them. I get everything. I still got all my, all the times I booked, because we got hung up on by Tony Bennett. Because I used to call, we had Donna Summer, Rodney Dangerfield, I just call Vegas, and just call, can I get, Rodney Dangerfield's dressing room, please? And I'd get patched right in. It's crazy.
I forget who it was. You mentioned in your book that you called someone, and the first thing they asked is, how'd you get this line?
That was Rodney Dangerfield.
That was
How'd you get this number, kid? But Tony Bennett had come on. And Brad is interviewing Tony, and I'm producing him in there, and And he was like, Tony, why don't you give us a little, why don't you sing a little of I Left My Heart in San Francisco? And Tony was like, hey, I don't tell you how to do your radio broadcasting. You don't tell me what to sing. Hung up on him.
There you go. That's how
I have all the tapes, man. I saved everything.
How long were those interviews typically?
The Sybil one was probably 15 or 20 minutes because I had musical clips in there of the record that she did. It was called Vanilla.
Yeah.
But she was my crush when I was a teenager, man. And I got a chance to meet her, and I took a picture with her at the Reno Sweeney's, and I was never able to grow a mustache. I always tried, and it always would come out looking like Hitler.
Yeah. Which was what you were going for at the time.
So I have a picture of me and Sybil, but I hate it because the mustache is like, it's very dark right here under the nose, and then it's very light.
I'll AI it out.
Yeah. I to this day I can't grow a beard or a mustache.
It was my greatest feat.
Yeah,
That's all I ever wanted.
You wear it well, my friend.
Yeah.
How do you like all our wrestling talk at the end of the show? Do you like that?
Oh yeah, we like to wind down with a lot of wrestling. Maybe what we do after the shows is maybe you upload me a bunch of those interviews, and we do an episode of playing clips from those interviews.
Yeah, I got
at least in between.
Yeah, I got a lot. Of stuff.
Maybe we could do a couple episodes of that, little bonus things in between.
How about what about my baseball interviews?
Yeah, I want to. What I
got interviews with Tom Seaver, Darryl Strawberry when he made his debut with the Mets in '83, Bob Murphy, the voice of the Mets, and so many others. I mean, I used to get press passes, and I used to interview players, and I have so much of that, man.
I think it'd be great to at least maybe not hyper focus for a year, but to do a couple little spots.
Yeah, little
like,
snips,
some cool
little
stuff.
snippets.
Yeah. I think it'd be great to digitize and have up somewhere because, man, that stuff is history. You were a part of history and more than history. Even though this is your wrestling fans hub, I think a lot of the people who come here are also fascinated by your life, and I don't think they mind getting a little peek behind into those, even if it's not our focus.
Yeah. So. I also have a great interview I did with Toby Keith.
That's cool.
For TV. I have a video of that. He was high as a kite.
Perfect.
Because he was talking about, he had a new album coming out. Our host on Great American Country Television, for some reason, she couldn't make the interview. And I said, well, I'll do it. And I just sit down with Toby. And because he also had, at that time, he was doing TNA. He had just done that thing with Jarrett. So I, mostly it was about the album, but I had to throw in the wrestling question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so great. That's awesome. Yeah, let's pull some of that stuff out. Let's dig into that later on.
I need to bring you here for a week so you can go through all this shit and.
Yeah, I'll bring my equipment.
You wouldn't believe the shit I got.
I think it'd be amazing. So, but yeah, I think that'll wrap up this one for this week.
I don't want to leave yet.
Yeah. Let's talk about Reba.
I got to meet her. I got to meet them all, whatever it is. So yeah, this will wrap it up. I gotta go for a walk.
Yeah, you gotta go walk by, see that Ric Flair star.
Yeah, I'm not going to Nashville. I may go to Nashville this weekend. My attorney invited me to see the band Fish.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so I may go to that.
Yeah, they're one of those bands you ought to see at least once.
Yeah. It'll be fun. It's always fun. All right, Marsh, give us your plugs and what you're doing, what's exciting in your life, the Medusa, your other shows, everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm over there with Medusa on youtube.com/Queen of Carnage. I'm over here with you, Pro Wrestling Spotlight on YouTube. And Wrestling on the Rocks is still kicking up from time to time. So we're over there, wrestlingontherocks.com. But that's kind of it. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. I'm on X occasionally, but I log out pretty quick nowadays. So
yeah,
you can always try me there.
Dude, man. You are a busy dude.
So but that'll do it. Thank you.
Always appreciated. It's good to see you as always and hear your voice.
You too.
We'll see you next time. All right, everybody. That'll wrap up this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. You could join our private group at facebook.com/John Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight Podcast and Radio Show. The public page on Facebook is doing quite well, as I always say. It's John Arezzi's Matt Memories. There's a private group there as well. If you're on Twitter, it's simply @John Arezzi, Instagram @John Arezzi, Threads @John Arezzi as well. And if you'd like a signed and numbered copy of my book, Matt Memories, to hear about all my adventures in my crazy effed up life, just send me an email, john@mattmemories.com. We'll send you one out for $25, and that'll be signed and numbered for you. john@mattmemories.com is the email address. We have the other podcast, Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, covering all the shows I covered from the Mecca of all arenas 50 years ago to the day of the show. So why don't you check that out wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden is co-hosted by Tim Poutre, written and researched by Richie Garcia. And the baseball podcast is still up and well, even though the Blue Jays are now out. We will continue the podcast probably through the World Series and then wrap that up for this season. Recent guests, if you're a baseball fan, I mean, we had Steve Phillips on this week, former GM of the Mets and a baseball analyst. We've had Cito Gaston on earlier, the former Blue Jays manager. Each week, a different guest at the Gibby Show. Check that out wherever you get your favorite podcast, but also on YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel as well, the Gibby Show. I want to thank our producer, creative director, Marsh. He does a wonderful job each week. And I want to thank those Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway, and for each and every one of the patrons for your support helping with the production costs for this show. Until next week, when we relive more history with the Ron Skoler episode, this is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.